Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Yevamot daf Nun Hey. We are going to begin on the bottom of Nun Daled Amud Beis. 5 lines from the bottom. Bahadit Nan. So Amrulo Mesa Ishtacha. If a person says that your wife died, Vanasa Achaisa, and you married her sister, Miavia, from your father, and then Mesa, she died. V'nasa Chaisa, then you married the other sister, Mi'ima, from the mother's side. Mesa v'nasa Chaisa Mi'avia, and again you married, and then you're told that she died. So again, Mesa v'nasa Chaisa Mi'avia, so you ended up marrying the sister. Mesa v'nasa Chaisa Mi'ima. So what ended up happening? This is a very lengthy case. But it's a situation where you have numerous fathers and daughters, fathers and mothers, and there's actually 5 women: Dina, Yocheved, Sarah, Rivka, and Milka. So you have each of these sisters who are somehow related, either completely to one another or potentially half sisters. But once you go from sister 1 to number 5, so then they're not related at all. So again, imagine that you have these 5 women, and Reuven marries Milka. Now, she was somewhat related to the other sister as a half sister. So imagine that afterwards, Reuven travels abroad without his wife, and he comes back and he's told that his wife died. So therefore, because he realized or thought at the time that his sister, that this woman died, he can now marry the sister. And then again, he goes away and he's told again first, Milka died, so he married Rivka. Rivka died, so he married Sarah. Yocheved died. He married Sarah. Sarah died, so he married Yocheved. Yocheved died, so he married Dina. So it's actually 5 different times he married, and they are either sisters from a half sister for the father or to the mother, the ones that are closest to each other. Again, once you've already distanced from 1, 3, and 5, they're not sisters at all. Now the problem is that it turns out that, as the Gemara there discusses, she really, none of them really died. So the problem is, obviously, he was married to Milka, the first wife. The problem is, what's the status of wives 2, 3, 4, and 5? So, for example, Rivka, so she and Milka were related, they're half-sisters. So therefore, that second marriage shouldn't work. So this is how we understand this. If you look in Rashi, Reuven says Milka, right? As I said, Reuven first married Milka. He traveled. He was told your wife died. Says Rivka, so he ended up marrying Rivka. Now they're half sisters, Milka and Rivka, from the father's side. Which of course we're going to say that's, once we find out that Milka was really alive, that marriage was not a valid marriage to Rivka. So we see that you cannot, there's an Isser of Achos Ishto, your wife's sister, from your father's side. And then it says, V'chazru v'amrulo Mesa Rivka, someone told you that Rivka died, but now it says Sarah, so you ended up marrying Sarah, which is Achos Mi'ima. So Amrulo Mesa Sarah, but now says Yocheved, Achos Mi'avia. So all these different situations, and it turned out that Kulon Kayamois, Rashi says, they're all alive. So what is the din? So on this, the Gemara says as follows. So the din is Mutter b'rishayna v'shlishis v'chamishis. You're mutter to remain with Milka, of course she's your first wife, Sarah the third one, and Dina the 5th one. That they are actually your wives. and Rashi says umutter basara chosa, your Sarah, who is the sister, noisines anusa. Okay, upoitrei sor sehen. It'll pater the co-wives. So aser b'shnia revius. The second and fourth one are aser too, because even though you did a marriage, they were not valid marriages, because they were related to, Rivka is related to Milcah and to Sarah, and Yocheved is related to Sarah and Dinah. So therefore he's not allowed to marry those, remain married to them. So the bia will not pater the co-wives. If, let's say, the brother died, so in that situation it's not going to pater the tzara in this case. Now the imbal shnia achar misas rishayna, it says, let's say you took upon the second one after the first one died. In other words, Milk actually did die, mutter b'shnia or vias. In that situation, now one is out of the picture, so now number 2 becomes number 1. So now it shifts, instead of being 1, 3, 5, it's now 2 and 4 that is mutter. Upater is saying the asa b'shlish chamisha. Then it'll be asa the 3rd and the 5th. So basically, the start, obviously the wife who you have now legitimately is mutter, but then the next one is asa because of the half sister relationship. Now, why don't we bring this whole thing down, which is obviously is extremely complex, as we continue in Ham and Aleph, Alma Achos Ishto, when it comes to the Isser of taking your wife's sister, of course, while they're alive, while your wife is alive, even let's say after you divorced her, you're not allowed to marry the sister, is Bein Mina Ab, Bein Mina Aim, Asuros. It doesn't matter if they're half-sisters from the father or from the mother, either way it's Asur. So Manolan, so Yolef mi'achaisai, we're not from the din of a sister. Ma'achaiso bein mina ab bein mina aim, you're not allowed to take and be married to your sister. It doesn't matter if it's a half-sister from your father or mother's side. And obviously, it's certainly not a whole sister. So Avkan bein mina ab bein mina aim. So therefore, we're going to learn out that the same din applies to when it comes to sisters, to half sisters, so too when it comes to achas ishto. When it comes to achas ishto, the wife's sister. So if at the Gemara v'neiliv, so why don't we learn out the leiliv midodasai? Want to learn out from your aunt? Madodaso mina avol mina aim. It's only if it's from your father's side is an isser, but from your mother's side she's mutter to you. Avkan mina avol mina aim. So why would we compare this case of achas ishto, your wife's sister? Why would we want to compare it to achoso, to your sister? Why don't we just learn out from the case instead of dodaso, your aunt? So mastabra miachoso havulamela shechin kroivi atzmo. It makes more sense to learn kroivi atzmo mikroivi atzmo. It's your own relative that makes her usher, as opposed to your aunt. So Adara midadaso havulamela. Maybe we should learn from the aunt. Shechin davar al davar al yedei kedushin, davar shal yedei kedushin. Both of them. The aunt is because there was a kedushin, and also over here, achos ishto is kedushin. But your sister, there's no kedushin. So therefore, we can't just simply learn out from achos. We can't learn out pashut from achos, from your sister, because maybe you'll learn instead from your aunt. El me'eshes achiel finan. Rather, we're going to learn out from your brother's wife. The shechein davar al yedei kedushin ekuravi atzmo. Because it has both qualities. It takes place, this Isser, because your brother married her, and also it's Kuravi, it's also Kuravi Atzmo. It's your own relative that makes her Asser, namely your brother. The Eishas Ach Guf Manon. How do you know there's an Isser of taking your brother's wife? The Sani Ervas Eishas Achichel Segali. Bein Mina'ab Bein Ma'aim. So Atamir Bein Mina'ab Bein Ma'aim. Father and or mother's side, or Enu Elam Mina'ab Lo Ma'aim, not the mother. But Dinhu. Chiyuv kan v'chiyuv b'chaisa. There's a chiyuv not only here but also by the sisters. B'chaisa bein mina'ab bein mina'aim. Kan bein mina'ab bein mina'aim. Or maybe not. Maybe you can look at it differently. Chiyuv kan v'chiyuv u'b'doidasai. There's a chiyuv by both. Ma doidaso by the sister mina'ab mina'aim. So avkan mina'ab mina'aim. So near me daima. Donin kroivi atzmi kroivi atzmo. As we said before, we're going to connect the two things in which it's your own relative that makes her aser. That the reason why it's aser is because of the relationship of the father. Again, a chayso is not through kedushin; it's your sister. So again, we're going to win out from here, father and mother. So maybe it's both talking about the Isser is your brother's wife from your father's side. One is to tell you if they have children that she's usher to. That even if they don't have any children, still they're going to be she'll be usher to. Whereas this would mean if she doesn't have any children and in the life span of her husband, mid Rav Huna nafka. Where do you learn that out from Rav Huna? As Rashi says above, dechsev eishas achiv nidhi kidalael. The aim of eishas ach min av. Again, maybe both of them are talking about the father's wife from the father's side. Chadam, your brother's wife from the father's side. Chadid eishal banim b'chayim bala, v'chadid eishal banim l'achar misas bala. Talking about after the husband died. So yeshul banim l'achar misas bala tzricha kor. I don't need a pasuk. V'nemer rachmana shein lo banim muteres. If she doesn't have children, she's mutter to you. Mashma hal yeshul banim asura. So it's a basic diuk. The dilma ein lo banim asura l'alma v'shar liyavam. Maybe if she doesn't have children, she's usher to everyone else, but she's mutter to do yibum. But yeshul banim, if she has children, shar alma v'shar liyavim. Maybe it means not only is the Yavam allowed the world to take, but also the Yavam is also mutter to marry her. Inami ein lo banim mitzvah, yesh lo banim rishus. Maybe you're allowed to do yibum, it's just a rishus. Inami ein lo banim yesh lo banim loy, and v'lav haba machlal aseh. So it's coming to tell you that because it's a lav haba machlal aseh is an aseh. The kasav krah achrina ervas achiv gila. The aim ma eishas ach mina aim keishas ach mina av. Ma eishas ach, just like your brother's wife. Mina av l'achar misas ba'ila sharia. That after the husband dies, she's mutter to you because it's your brother's wife. If she doesn't have children, av eishas ach mina aim l'achar misas ba'ila sharia. Maybe we should say the same thing. Your brother's wife from the mother's side also. Once your brother dies, you can marry her. So Amar Kra, it remains the state of being aser. So the whole mitzvah of yibum is dafka min av, as we established at the beginning of this masechta, and not min ha'im. Achayso, when it comes to your sister, the kasab bo kares lamli, which it mentions kares lamli, what is the significance over here? Rav Yochanan, sheimas and kulam v'hel v'achas, chayabol kalachs v'achas. That if a person would do multiple averas at the same state of forgetfulness, nonetheless you're going to be chayav on each one. Says Rashi. Achayis the kasav lebed kares lamli kivan de darshas hara the krayas sera de kul kares be'achayso ma tidrashme hakvar nichtav b'chol arayos of nichras on a so it's already written there. So it's saying that you're chayav on each one. Says Rashi, hashta havi davar shahay b'chlal b'yasmin aklal lamed al klal kuloi. The machay so miyuchedes shehi erba v'chayav and love b'fnei atzmai av kol shehi erba v'chayav and love b'fnei atzma. You're chayav for each one separately. Rav Yitzchak diyamer kol chayav krisos b'chlal hoyu v'lama yatsa kares b'chayso l'danim b'kares lo b'malkos. To tell you, when it comes to a person who has a relation with a sister, the punishment is kares, but he does not get malchus. So l'chalik minolan. How do we know this din of being l'chalik, that you can be chayv kalachas v'achas? Nafkalei, you went it out el isha benidas to muscle chayv kalachas v'achas and call isha v'isha. Dodos the kasab rachmana arim yu lamali. Why does it mention arim yu when it comes to the prohibition of taking your aunt from your father's side? Look at the Rabbi Rami. Ksiv arir miyu, then they'll be like childless. Uksiv arir miyamusu, that they'll die. Haketzah. So yeshul banim, if you have children, then karvan, you're going to bury them. In lo banim hoylech harir, they're going to be childless. V'israch l'michtav aririm yu, v'israch l'michtav arurim yamusu. Because of Rachman arurim yu, havamina ad chatei, only until the actual sin. However, avol mechatav elech lo, because of Rachman arurim yamusu, that they'll actually die. Because of Rachman arurim yamusu, havamina mechatav elech havamikar lo sricha. Okay. Go to Rashi. Aririm hainu nami karesh zar nichras. Aririm is the same thing as kares. Aririm yu l'shas misasan mashma seifan levalide ariri dim yeshul banim kariban. If you have children, you're going to bury them. Aririm yamusu mashma de'im hein achshav aririm. If right now you are childless, ken yamusu, so you shall die. V'fi yavoldu lehem lachar ma'isa. Even if, let's say, you have they're born after this avera. So again, because of Rachmana Ririm, you have a mina adahavi ad chate. V'hachi mashma soifim liyoser Ririm shemusu b'neihem sheshelhem ata. Only the children that you have now are going to die. You're Ririm. Abo b'shas misasam at the time of death. Lo yamusa Ririm. Maybe you won't die childless. The banim dahavi le mechetev elech lo mesi. Let's say you have a child after the sin, so that child won't die. So I come to tell you that that child before and after is also going to die. Okay. So now the Gemara says, Hara d'chayv lavan manolan. How do we know, as we mentioned in our Mishnah, that when it comes to all arayos, the din is that it doesn't even have to be Gemara Bia, even it's Hara. Some element of beginning of Bia, even without having Gemara Bia, nonetheless you're still chayav. So how do we know Hara d'chavi lavan? How do we know that there's this Indian that when it comes to chayav lav, you're going to be chayav that lav even through Hara? But to go Rachmana shechva zera gabi shivcha charufa, because we learned shechva zera by a shivcha charufa. Namely, when a person has bia with a maidservant who is engaged to an eved kanani, it says that it's dafka if he has shechva zera, namely that he actually had a gemar bia. So the diak, says Rashi, Shivcha Kananis Hamurasis Eved Ivri Shemutter Ba Kedeksev Yamadan Vitin Lo. So in that case, only when it's Shivcha Zera you're going to be chayav by having be with a Shivcha Charufa. The Chavi Lavin Bahara. When it comes to the Chavi Lavin, other Chavi Lavin, it's even only Bahara. The even by Hara you're going to be chayav. Adarabba. Medgar Rachamana Hara B'Chavi Krisus. The fact that it mentions Hara when it comes to Kares. Maybe since my crease is just so chomer, you're going to be chayav b'hara. So certainly when it comes to lavin, you can make the diak that it's going to be, you're only going to be chayav by once you do gemar bia. So how do we know by chayav lavin it's b'hara? Maybe it's not true. It's only gemar bia. Or Ravashi im kain lishtakra mishivcha charufa. Fine. Hara d'chavi lavin, fine. So in other words, if it's fact true that the status would simply be that is always Gemar Bia, so then why does it mention Gemar Bia specifically when we're talking about why do we mention the Shivcha Harufa and Gemar Bia Davka when we're discussing a Shivcha Charufa? It's mashma only by Shivcha Charufa it's Gemar Bia, which is mashma when it comes to someone else, Chavi Lavin, that it's even Bahara. Because if it was Gemar Bia by Chavi Lavin, then you wouldn't mention Dafka by Shivcha Charufa. Okay. Chavi Lavin Bahara. So Adarim, the Gal Rachmana Hara B'Chavi Krisus, fine. So Rabash, no, Imkin Lishta Kram Mishivcha Charufa. The fact that it says it, mashma that there must be Hara's B'Chavi Lavin. So Hara, the Chavi Lavin, the Kahuna Manon, how do we know also when it comes to Kahuna? So Asya Kicha Kicha, so make a Gzer Shava. That also when it comes to a Kayin, it's the same din. The Chavi Asay Manon, says Rashi, Kigoin Mitzvi Adaimi, Ad Shlishi, Manon the Asiri Hara. So you're allowed to take an Egyptian woman on the third generation, which is mashma before that not. So therefore, if you take a woman from the second generation Mitzri, that is a chayev aseh. So the question is, if a person has tashmish with her, at what point are you chayev? So we're saying by hara also, not just by chavi krisis, not just by chavi lavin, which we went out from the shivcha charufa, but also by even chayev aseh. The question is, how do you learn that? So as we continue in Nun Hamid Beis, asya bia, we went out a gzer shava. As Rashi says, b'chavi lavin. It says, when it comes to chavi lavin, we already established that even b'hara. So Yevamot l'shuk manoan. How do we know if, let's say, Yevamot goes and has tashmish without chalitza, that there's going to be an isser even b'hara if she had relations with a man in the marketplace? Ilamandi amr lav. According to the one who says that this is a lav because the pasuk says ulosia eishes hameis chutza, so therefore it's considered to be a case of a chavi lavin, which we were established from Shivcha Harufa. Yomandi amr aseh. If you want to say it's because of an aseh, we have the gezer shabbat we just established bia. So if it's a lav, a woman, a yevamot to l'shuk is a lav or an aseh, it falls under those categories. El yevamot yavam manolan. How do we know a yevamot to a yavam? Says Rashi, the kanile b'harama, hara'ah. How do we know that even tchilas bia is enough that you'll be kind to her? So Gemara says, asya bia, because the gzer shava. So isha l'balo manolan, a wife to her husband. How do we know? Regarding just stam, a person who's mekadesh a woman with bia, how do we know you're going to already be mekadesh her even b'hara? So asa kicha gzer shava. Amar Rabbi lamli de kasav rachmana shichva zera b'shivcha charufa. So why do we mention shichva zera by a shivcha charufa, which we said is by will be gemar bia? Shichva zera be'eshes ish shichva zera de saita. Why does it mention this by these three situations? So the shivcha charufa k'nei amra, we already established it, that dafka when it comes to the shivcha charufa, it's only when there's gemar bia. The Eishes Ish, why does it mention Shechva Zera by an Eishes Ish? So it's Prat Umeshamish Mace. It's referring to if his member is not erect. So in that situation, it excludes that individual. That person is not going to be chayav for Eishes Ish. Says Rashi, Ve'el Eishes Amitcha L'titin L'shechavtecha L'zara. Fine. So that's what we derive from that. A person is mishamish mace, as Rashi be'aver mace, bo kishui de'ein royal b'hazriya. So the only way it's shaykh to reach the level of completion of having shechva zera come out of one's aver is dafka if the aver is hard. However, if it's not a kishui aver, then it's not shaykh, and therefore, if a man has tashmish a woman without a kishui aver, that's not a chiyuv of eishasish. Hanicham ermer mishamish meish b'rayis potter. Amandi ermer chayim ha'kememor. It's actually machlokas. Ela prat u'mishamish meisa. It's referring to his relationships. He has relations with a dead married woman. Now, what exactly does that mean? Says Rashi, Eishes ish le'acher misasa. The salkadat chamina hoyel le'acher misa nami nimri ikri sheiro. You would maybe think that she's still considered to be your relative even after her passing. So therefore, no. Says Rashi, the bala mikri dechsiv gabi tuma ki ima sheiro. So there is an element of sheiro of your wife that died, so regarding whether or not you could, as a Kohen, could bury her, etc. So sheiro, there's an element of marriage, an element of she's still married, if you will, even after she's died. The answer is no, that if you're mishamish a woman who is dead, so you're not chayv eishasish. You're probably over other things, including obviously you have some serious problems, but you're not going to be chayv eishasish. She's not, it has to be a woman who's alive. So Ema l'chayev aleha be'eshes ish kamash. So that's the chiddush, that you're not chayev. the Sota Lamli? Why does it mention Shechva Zera by a Saita? Look at the Sanya. Shechva Zera Prad Davar Acher. It's coming to exclude some other thing. My Davar Acher. So Rav Sheshes Prat, it's excluding Likishikini La Shalo Kadarka. If a person secluded himself with a woman, Shalo Kadarka, says Rashi, Shahaya Chashna Imoi Bekach, that this was the Chshad. The Ksha'imer al Tisteri Imo, do not seclude yourself with him. You do a Lakoil, the Ladas Kain his Hira. This is why he warned her. Below Hayachayshta Imo Babi Acheres. Lishna Acheres. Another lashain is leshakini lo shaloi kadarka al tistri imoy liboil lo shalo kadarka. Again, that when he was warning him about having tashmish with her, a man having tashmish with her, shalo kadarka. Prat leshakini lo shalo kadarka. In that situation, that will not be. It has to be a shechva zera, and if it's shul kadarka, having tashmish in the unnormal way, so in that situation she's not shaykh to have shechva zera, to someone who can have a child. Normally, Rabbi mishkavi ishiksiv. That's hard to imagine because we always connect dark kadarka to shul kadarka. Both bios are considered to be the same halachically, so l'chayr she should still have the din of a saita. El amarava prat. It doesn't mean that they actually had tashmish with the warning. Says Rashi, miach dadim bedosh mebachutz b'shari varim, rubbing the man and the woman's bodies together without actually having tashmish. So Amalei Abaye pritzusa asar achmana. Says Rashi, bin miyakolaim pshita delav kinuihu. Obviously, the Torah is not going to say that's asar. Of course, it's aser, but it's not going to be an element of being a sota to have to exclude that. It's a davar pashut that you would be potter in that situation of derech evarim. Rabbi prat likashikine la benishika, that she was secluded with some type of physical contact of nishika. It doesn't mean kissing with the lips, but with one's evarim, with both of their genitalia. So hanichaman, what exactly is neshika? So hanichaman yamar hara zu hachnasas atara. I can understand that hara. What exactly is hara? We didn't say there's gemar being, then there's hara. So what is hara? Zu hachnasas atara. It's the actual taking of the crown of the aver and entering it into the woman, and that's it. Just that first initial physical contact. That would be hara. So that actually would be a chiddush. That all they're doing is their bodies are touching one another. The two private areas are touching one another, but the atara actually did not enter her. So mayil k'meimar. So in that situation, again, you could say, that's not much of a chiddush. Says Rashi, heichem elamandi erm neshika deharahi heichem emayit. So elul olam l'shakini l'derech evarim, as you said. So that's pritzus. So why would we think even have a havamina? It's totally on how particular the husband is. And he's obviously kapid. He's making a big deal about it. Kamash Malan, that derech evarim is not a way that a person is going to be chayiv. Okay. For a sota. All right, let's stop here for 1 second. Let's see a couple questions. Question 11. Ezu bi asura ein chayav aleha b'hoira bilvad. What forbidden bia will a person not be chayiv by just doing hara? So we answered the shivcha charufa. It's only once there's actual zera. Now, when it comes to eishasish, you are going to be chayiv even hara, and therefore we said eishasish is coming to just tell you something else, that if you're mishamish either while your aver is mace, that you're potter, or it's coming to tell you that if you're mishamish a woman who is dead, you're potter. Says question 12. Mishamish mace barayas mahadin. So that is actually a machlokus. If your aver is not you don't have kishri aver, so it's a machlokas whether or not you're chayev. And mishamish mesa barayos, having tashmish with a dead woman who was once married, that situation you are going to be potter. That was question 12. Okay, let's just see a couple more questions. T A 8. Lumli de kasev shechva zer be'eshes ish. So what is the reason why it says that? Either it's come to a prat, as we said, like shemes, your mishamish mace, your aver was mace, or probably mishamish mesa. So nami ikri she'ero. That was TA 8, which is really a very similar question to question 12 that we just did. Okay, question TB 11. Hara de chayvi lavin manolan. How do we know that you're chayv even by hara? So we said we learned it out from shivcha harufa, that by shivcha harufa you need gemar bia. Machla de chayvi lavin bahara. So mashma all other bias is bahara. That was TB 11. TB 11. Similar question to number 11. Okay, let's continue. So we mentioned the machlokus. What is hara? Is it hachnasas atara, or is it even just the neshika of the avarim? So on this, the Gemara continues and discusses this further. He says as follows. Omer Shmuel, hara zu neshika. So mashal adam shemeniach etzba'o al piv. It's comparable to a person who takes his finger on his mouth. It's impossible that he's not pressing a little bit into his flesh. So he's putting your finger right next to your mouth. So by pressing, you're causing some element of entry into the mouth. And of course, this is lashon nikiya. This is referring to a man's aver. So even though it's neshika, it didn't actually enter into the woman, but this is also considered to be enough of tchilas bia, according to one shot, or it mamish require the physical atara. Ki asa Rabba bar bar Chana Rav Yochanan Gomer bia b'shivcha charufa. So we learn out bia from shivcha charufa zuach nasas atara. We learn out from there that it's the requirement of at least hachnasas atara. So most of Rav Sheshes shechva zera enuchayev el al bias hameruk. It's only chayev when there's literally the meruk, which is Rashi's shemazriya, the creation of seed. Myla meruk gid. L'chara means that the gid of the man is creating the seed. The Gemara says lo meruk atara. It just means from the atara. Says Rashi, rosh hagid, the top. Ve'ena min hagid el basar. Kiyas Rav Dimi Yom Rav Yochanan harazu achnasas atara. So he said this other pshat is achnasas atara. So Amalei, Iva haraba barchana ulayam harcha doesn't say this. Amalhu, o ihu shakroi o ana shakri. Either you're lying or I'm lying. So Kiyas Rav Yochanan harazu achnasas atara. Adrab, Bar Chana Vadipol, he certainly argues. Now, the Shmuel Milema Polig, does he argue with Shmuel? Says Rashi out of Shmuel, the Omer Neshika Habi Hara. Lo, Meneshika Biad Hachnasa Zatar Hara, Karle. There's actually not just one small action, but it's from one part to the other. The Neshika, which is just the touching of the Avarim, until the Hachnasa Satara, all that whole entire stage, that is considered to be still Hara, Karle. So it's not necessarily that they argue with one another. It's again, they're different parameters where Hara starts and where it ends. Kiyas Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Rav Yochanan Harazu Hachnasa Satara. That's Hachnasa Satara. Gamar Bia Mamish. Gamar Bia is Gemar Bia at the end, Mamish. As we continue in Babel Aleph, Mekan v'elech enu el neshika upater. From then on, says Rashi, Machnasas Atara u'amata enu el neshika. Anything before Hachnasas Atara, according to him, is just considered to be neshika in your pater. And upater leha. Upol got a Shmuel. He actually argues with Shmuel. So again, Shmuel says neshika is hara, which means that the hara begins at the time even at the time of Neshika. Or this is saying no, the whole only time is only from Hachnasas Atara. You need Hachnasas Atara to be chayev. However, Neshika itself, you're going to be potter. So there's a machlokas when it comes to Hara. Is the chiyuv even just if all was done was Neshika, or do we say that the Hara includes all the way up until the element of Hachnasas Atara? Adkan.